Hey everyone. You know, I keep hearing, oh, it's Biden's fault. It's Biden's fault. Biden did it. Biden did it. It's his fault. He done it. If it wasn't for Biden, blah, 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 bullshit. Okay. Well. And then all the money that he keeps winding up with and doing whatever with, and some of the money can't even be found. I decided to double check myself, and I looked up the word embezzlement. And it specifically states a white-collar financial crime in which a person lawfully entrusted with assets or funds fraudulently appropriates them for personal use. I said, okay. I was right. Appropriates them for personal use. So I looked up, some stuff that Biden done during his term in office. Okay. Now, there is the Biden White House archives.gov /WP content /uploads /2025 /01 /. Okay. And that'll pull up 85 pages worth of stuff. And truthfully, I'm not writing down 85 pages worth of stuff. I don't have a computer or a printer. I don't have those capabilities right now to even do a double screen to where I can show you articles that are coming out and documents and things like that. So I have to write stuff out. But I'm going to read some of the stuff to y'all that came up when I researched him. And then I'm going to read some stuff to you that is on the last 2 pages of the archive pertaining to the Supreme Court. Okay, so this one is itemized list of what Joe Biden did as president. Bipartisan infrastructure law. He signed a $1.2 trillion package to fund roads, bridges, public transit, clean water, high-speed internet, power grid upgrades across all 50 states. Inflation Reduction Act was authorized historic federal investments in clean energy and climate action. It also allowed Medicare to negotiate the price of certain prescription drugs and capped out of pocket insulin costs for seniors at $35 per month. Chip and Science Act enacted legislation to boost domestic manufacturing semiconductor chips and strengthen U.S. technology competitiveness against foreign entities. American Rescue Plan passed a $1.9 trillion stimulus package in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, funding vaccine distribution, direct stimulus checks, and extend unemployment benefits. And Bipartisan Safer Communities signed the most significant federal gun control legislation in 30 years, enhancing background checks for buyers under 21 and funding, quote-unquote, red flag laws. Now, I can only speak for Texas, okay? At 18 years old, you're legally allowed to buy a rifle or a shotgun. And I'm not talking about an AR-type rifle, just your basic, regular, common, everyday hunting rifle. And then honoring our PACT Act, expanding health care benefits and disability compensation for millions of veterans exposed to toxic burn pits during their service. Economy and Growth oversaw a period of record-setting job recovery and historically low unemployment rates, particularly for minority communities and people with disabilities. This Butch Law Act secured the pensions of over 2 million union workers and retirees whose multi-employer pension plans were at risk of failing. Federal wages established $15 minimum wage for federal workers and contractors. Healthcare and Public Health, Affordable Care Act, the ACA, increased ACA subsidies, driving enrollment numbers to historic highs and lowered healthcare premiums for millions of Americans. COVID-19 response led the rollout of the national vaccination program, allowing for widespread distribution of free COVID-19 vaccines and tests to the American people. This one is foreign policy and national security. Global alliances rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement and bolstered the NATO alliance, particularly in coordinating international support for Ukraine following the Russian invasion. So he was in support for Ukraine. Okay? So Zelensky is right about expecting our help with that war. Counterterrorism authorized the drone strike that successfully killed Amon. I may be saying that wrong. And that's okay. I'm not infallible. Zawahiri, the leader of Al-Qaeda. Civil Rights and Society. Respect for Marriage Act. Signed legislation codifying protections for same-sex and interracial marriages at the federal level. So it would be very strongly suggested and recommended that Trump get the hell up off the LGBTQ community. Okay. Juneteenth. Signed legislation designating Juneteenth as a federal holiday. Military service overturned the ban preventing transgender Americans from openly serving in the military. Now, these last two is about the Supreme Court. Okay? And I really think it would be a good idea to enact a lot of this, but there's one particular part in term limits for Supreme Court justices that I really don't think would be a good idea to have. Okay, that's just me. And you'll see which part I'm talking about once I get to it. The Supreme Court reform. And this is on the lower part of page 84 and the rest of what would be left of page 85 on the archives link that I had told you. It says, in the face of this crisis of confidence in America's democratic institutions, President Biden released a bold plan to reform the Supreme Court. It says, no immunity for crimes for a former president committed in office. I agree with that. Completely. Everyone should be held accountable for their crimes. Doesn't matter how rich you are. You were born naked in the world just like the rest of us. Equal rights under the law. President Biden called for constitutional amendments that make clear no president is above the law or immune from prosecution for crimes committed while in office. This "no one is above the law" amendment would state that the Constitution does not confer any immunity from federal criminal indictment, trial, conduct, or conviction, or sentencing by virtue of previously serving presidents. Term limits for Supreme Court justices. President Biden endorsed a system which the president would appoint a justice every 2 years to spend 18 years in active service on the Supreme Court. Term limits would ensure that the court membership changes with some regularity, make timing for court nominations more predictable and less arbitrary, and reduce the chance that any single presidency imposes undue influence for generations to come. The part of that I do not agree with is to spend 18 years in active service on the Supreme Court. I completely disagree with this. That is entirely way too long. And right now we have a very corrupt Supreme Court. There's too many that's on the panel that agree to the Jim Crow map. Okay, it just, no. No, I'm sorry, that's too many years and that should not be available. Now, I do believe that every 2 years that there should be a new Supreme Court justice appointed, bipartisan, okay? And the only way that I can see this being a possibility is if it is put up to vote. Because every 2 years, we do have a voting process. You've got when you vote in for presidency and, whoever all else is on the ballot. And then you've got the primaries, and then sometimes you got runoffs because they didn't meet the 50 percentile of what have you, So then you go in for voting on the runoffs. So I think, my personal opinion, that every 2 years there should be a vote by the American people to pick Supreme Court justices, okay? And then it ensures that every 2 years one is dismissed and one comes in and takes that place. The next one that was voted in 2 years prior to the one that left leaves 2 years after him and another one comes in. It keeps it on a bipartisan level. And I don't feel that a person should be allowed to be president if their 65th birthday is spent during their 4-year term. That's my opinion. That's what I think. That is how I feel. Okay? Because we're dealing with this orange idiot in the White House that just don't have any sense. He has got no sense at all. He's made the White House look like a or not even ghetto fabulous. Made it look like a rundown trailer park that the owner or even a property manager just doesn't really care to keep up the maintenance work and stuff on it. Just let it go and turn into trash. A place that you really shouldn't even be charging anybody rent to live at. The White House looks like trash right now. And I have no comprehension and I can't wrap my brain around how the hell Congress or anybody can continue to allow this to happen. That White House doesn't belong to anybody that comes in as president. They are a temporary fixture to that place. The White House belongs to the people of the United States. Our tax dollars pays for the lawn care. Our tax dollars pays for the electric, pays for the surveillance cameras, the CCTVs, hell, we even pay the damn CIA to protect these people. There is no way in Sam hell that anyone should ever have the right to do any destruction, destroy anything on the White House without being able to go to Congress. He has defaced federal government property. Because the government oversees everything for the White House. So it's listed as government property. Just like he allowed the insurrectioners to deface federal property when they destroyed the U.S. Capitol. Yes, I said it. And I'll say it again, and I'll say it again and again. I don't care who it was that conned or coerced these adults into destroying and invading the U.S. Capitol. We are over the age of 18. Anyone that is considered legally an adult by their age should absolutely be held accountable, and they should still be in prison. 100% bold face, flat foot, 10 toes down. I stand on that. With my chest pumped out, baby. Put their ass back in prison. Period.